What if I told you there's a forgotten manuscript that has shaped the fate of nations, sometimes overtly, sometimes in the shadows, for well over a century? A book so powerful, it has been studied by politicians, propaganda masters, marketing gurus, and even revolutionaries, all searching for a blueprint to sway the minds of millions. This isn't some dusty relic locked away in a museum basement. It's right there, hiding in plain sight. Published way back in 1895, yet is more relevant than ever in our hyper-connected age. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal why this text is whispered about in secret circles, how its insights have been twisted into manipulative tools, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself from the psychological triggers it dissects. You'll see why some call this the most dangerous knowledge in the world, and by the end, you'll know its name. But first, ask yourself, if one book can really shape how entire crowds think and act, can you afford not to know its methods? Buckle in, because what you're about to discover could permanently change the way you see the world around you. Throughout history, powerful figures have sought ways to shape public opinion, to rally support, quell opposition, or spark rebellion. From ancient empires that relied on divine symbolism to modern governments that spin press releases, the art of influence is as old as civilization itself. But in 1895, one man dared to put it all on paper, systematically dissecting the psychology of crowds. His work became a foundational text for anyone, good or bad, who aspired to move the masses like pieces on a chessboard. The chilling part is how often these principles are used on us without our realization. Charismatic leaders harness them in stirring speeches. Commercials flash them in front of our eyes. Even social media algorithms amplify certain types of content to fuel emotional reactions. The common thread is simple. Keep people glued to an idea by gripping their emotions, repeating the message, and making them feel part of something bigger. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's observable fact. Spend just a few minutes comparing your online feed to someone else's, and you'll realize how effectively each of us is put into a digital echo chamber. That echo chamber leverages the very tactics found in this century-old text. Repeated ideas become truth. Emotional triggers override logic, and certain symbols or slogans work almost like hypnotic commands. Human beings love to think we're rational creatures, but the truth is often the opposite. Emotion leads, reason follows. Have you ever watched a crowd go from calm to enraged in just seconds? Maybe it's an incendiary tweet, a viral video, or dramatic news clip that ignites a tidal wave of anger or fear. Suddenly, logic is sidelined, and primal feelings take the wheel. This phenomenon is precisely what the 1895 author laid out in stark detail. Show people something that evokes a strong emotion, be it outrage, hope, or disgust, and they'll cling to it before they ever stop to question its validity. Historically, entire regimes rose on this principle. A single charismatic figure stirring nationalistic pride could make an entire nation rally behind him, ignoring any evidence that might contradict the fervor. Even today, political campaigns revolve around this same emotional spark. Ever notice the rallying chants, the crowd's collective adrenaline, the tears in people's eyes when a leader hits the right emotional note? It's not a coincidence. It's strategy. When your blood is pumping, your critical thinking hits pause. That's why this book is considered so dangerous. It coldly outlines how to tap into these emotional triggers to align masses behind any message. Yet understanding this principle is your first defense. Whenever you feel that sudden emotional surge, positive or negative, take a breath and ask, is someone pulling a psychological lever right now? That small pause might be the difference between following blindly and stepping back with clarity. Have you ever caught yourself humming a jingle from a commercial you don't even like? Or repeating a slogan you wholeheartedly disagree with? That's the spell of repetition at work. Once an idea is drilled into our minds enough times, we start to accept it, sometimes against our better judgment. This tactic is older than radio or television. Propagandists in the early 20th century hammered it home during wartime to unify entire countries under a single rally cry. But never before has repetition been so potent as it is right now. Social media has taken this principle and injected it with steroids. The algorithms feed us content similar to what we already engage with, creating endless loops of the same ideas. If your feed skews one way, you see the same style of posts, hashtags, memes, and commentary over and over again. After a while, these repeated statements feel like universal truths. That's why fact-checking can be so complicated. People don't just believe what's repeated, they cling to it because it's comfortable, familiar. It fits neatly into the mental framework that's already been built by constant exposure. And once that framework is set, any opposing fact can feel like an attack. By recognizing repetition as a tool, we can step out of these loops. The next time you catch yourself saying, "Well, everyone knows that," ask yourself if you believe it because it's truly supported by evidence, or simply because you've heard it 100 times. Imagine a single image that can rally thousands, maybe a flag, a logo, or a face on a poster. You might feel your heart stir just by seeing it. That's not random. Symbols have a direct line to the subconscious. They bypass complicated language and zero in on raw emotion, forging an instant connection. Religious movements do this masterfully with iconic imagery. National flags evoke pride and sometimes hostility if you're on the opposing side. Corporate brands spend millions perfecting logos that create trust, nostalgia, or excitement. Here's the kicker. These symbols need very little explanation. Show a powerful emblem on screen for a split second, and you can trigger a wave of associations. Security, patriotism, rebellion, luxury, whatever the symbol has been trained to represent. Politicians, especially, use this strategy during elections. They associate themselves with certain flags, color schemes, or slogans that make them feel a certain way to the public. It's all about controlling the emotional narrative in an instant. And let's not forget that symbols can manipulate not just what we think, but how we feel about ourselves. If you wear a certain brand's logo, you might feel more confident. If you see a particular emblem and react with fear or suspicion, it might be because that symbol was meticulously engineered to elicit exactly that. Next time a brand or leader unveils a shiny new design, pay attention. Ask, what emotion is this symbol working to ignite? And why now? Decoding that message can shatter the illusions that so many people take at face value. Have you ever listened to someone speak? Maybe they're introduced as a best-selling author, a PhD, or an award-winning scientist, and immediately found yourself more receptive to their ideas. That's the lure of prestige. We all do it. When a society respects certain titles and accolades, those who possess them gain a massive advantage in shaping public opinion. Sometimes that prestige is well earned. They really have done the work and deserve our respect. Other times, it's nothing but a shiny facade. The book we're discussing meticulously outlines how crowds defer to authority figures, often without question. Politicians surround themselves with experts who confirm their agenda. Corporations pay for endorsements from doctors or celebrities to gain the public's trust. Even YouTubers flash credentials, testimonials, or brand partnerships to signal, Hey, I'm legit, don't doubt me. But here's the scary part. Once we trust someone's prestige, we often stop looking at the details. We swallow their statements wholesale, rarely wondering if their references or endorsements are cherry-picked. If you dare to question them, you might face social backlash. How can you doubt Dr. So-and-so? He's got all those awards. The best way to resist this trap is to keep your critical thinking on. Titles, diplomas, and accolades may be genuine, but they're not infallible. Next time someone with a dazzling resume makes a claim, ask for evidence. If they're truly an expert, they won't mind backing up what they say. Let's be honest. Reality is complex, messy, and sometimes just plain terrifying. When someone offers us a neat, simplified narrative that promises quick answers and easy villains, we often leap at it. We want to believe. After all, it's comforting to have a single scapegoat for our problems or a single golden solution for all our woes. Leaders who understand this know exactly how to frame their message, paint an us versus them picture, or promise a single sweeping policy that will instantly fix everything. Of course, real life doesn't work that way. Most problems are layered and can't be solved by a catchy slogan. But that's precisely why the simplified story sells. It demands less mental energy, less fear of the unknown. And in uncertain times, financial crises, global conflicts, health emergencies, people cling to any sense of security, even if it's a mirage. This principle is at the heart of the danger in our mysterious 1895 text. The author shows that you don't need a complex strategy to manipulate crowds. Often, a simplistic narrative is far more potent than a nuanced argument. They are the enemy. We have the solution. Or join us or lose everything. These slogans cut through the noise. Once a group unites around that story, it's difficult to introduce contradictory information. They'll reject it outright because it threatens their sense of psychological security. But it's not all doom and gloom. Recognizing our craving for simple explanations can be empowering. When you hear a promise that sounds too convenient, or a villain that's demonized beyond all reason, take a step back. Complexity might be uncomfortable, but it's often closer to the truth. Resist the easy lie, and you'll be one step closer to genuine understanding. In many ways, credibility overlaps with prestige, but there's a subtle difference. Credibility involves carefully curated references, associations, and evidence that bolster a speaker's position. Think of a politician who cites a new study that perfectly supports their plan, or a company that brands itself as trusted by experts, yet never names those experts. The 1895 author spelled it out clearly. Crowds rarely have the time or expertise to fact-check every detail. If someone appears to have done their homework and can sprinkle in a few big names or official-sounding data, people will often accept them at face value. This phenomenon explodes in our digital age. A single infographic can go viral, claiming some shocking statistic. Users repost it tens of thousands of times, referencing it in arguments. Only later do we find out the source was never credible to begin with. But by then, the idea has embedded itself in the public consciousness. One of the greatest shields against this tactic is skeptical curiosity. Whenever you encounter impressive proof, whether it's from an academic or a social media influencer, ask, who funded this research? Are these testimonials real? Which experts are being quoted? And what's their actual track record? Sometimes you'll find the data is solid. Other times, you'll see it's more fluff than fact. The key is never to let an official tone or a polished presentation lull you into submission. Picture a roaring crowd, flags waving, chants echoing through the air. A speaker takes the stage, voice trembling with passion. Within minutes, everyone's hearts are thundering in unison. This is dramatization, the art of using theatrical emotion, vivid storytelling, and heightened stakes to whip a crowd into action. We see it not just in politics, but in marketing campaigns that promise life-changing results, or viral videos that provoke strong tears or outrage. The method is nearly identical. Amplify emotion to block out careful thought. The reason dramatization works so well is that it feels visceral. You don't just watch or listen, you experience the speaker's fervor. That emotional ride can be intoxicating. People leave rallies or watch certain videos feeling fired up, convinced they've found the absolute truth in that surge of passion. But ironically, that's often when they're most vulnerable to half-truths or manipulative agendas. Recognizing dramatization doesn't mean dismissing all emotional appeals. Sometimes real issues require strong feelings to motivate change, but you must always ask, is this passion backed by facts, or is it purely an emotional spectacle? That single question can cut through the adrenaline and help you see the difference between genuine urgency and cunning showmanship. So what is this book that has quietly influenced everything from political revolutions to advertising strategies, from dictatorships to modern media campaigns? Written by French social psychologist Gustave in 1895, it's titled The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind. In stark, methodical prose, Le Bon dissects exactly how crowds think, and more often, how they don't think. He explains that in a crowd, individuals often surrender their personal judgment to a collective psyche. In that collective psyche, a few well-placed triggers can have immense power. Le Bon's work, while groundbreaking at the time, took on a life of its own in the hands of those who saw the potential for control. Figures ranging from totalitarian leaders to modern PR teams have drawn from its pages to craft campaigns and movements that resonate on a deep emotional level. Some used it for liberation, rallying the oppressed to overthrow corrupt systems. Others used it for manipulation, tightening their grip on entire populations. Yet is the book itself evil? Not necessarily. It's more like a surgeon's scalpel. In the right hands, it can heal. In the wrong hands, it can wound or even kill. By reading The Crowd with awareness, you gain a roadmap to detect manipulation. You'll see how easily a single voice can become a dictator of public opinion. You'll understand why slogans, symbols, or repeated claims can unite or divide us on a massive scale. And armed with that knowledge, you'll be far less likely to fall prey to the same hidden forces. In a world where information moves at light speed, where global crises erupt overnight, and where social platforms have turned us into both consumers and creators of mass messaging, these timeless principles are more alive than ever. Emotion, repetition, symbolism, prestige, simplified stories, constructed credibility, dramatization, each one a lever that can steer the collective mind. Whether that mind moves toward enlightenment or manipulation depends on who's pulling the lever and whether you recognize the tug. Here's the critical takeaway. Knowledge is the antidote to blind compliance. When you see these tactics in action, you can question them instead of swallowing them whole. That's not to say you'll never feel the rush of a fiery speech or the allure of a promising slogan. Those are human reactions. But with awareness, you can harness your emotions rather than be dominated by them. Now, I need to hear from you. Do you think these revelations change everything? Or have we simply named what's been lurking in plain sight? Let's continue this conversation in the comments. Share your thoughts, your experiences, and yes, your skepticism. And if you're hungry for more insights that peel back the layers of how this world truly operates, hit that subscribe button. We've barely scratched the surface. The deeper we go, the more power you gain to see through the illusions and shape your reality on your own terms. Because trust me, this is just the beginning.